Welcome to Filmstrip, movie reviews presented by Continuous Play Podcast. These podcasts are spoiler-filled as we discuss the plots, characters, and themes of the films in review. All content used or discussed in these podcast episodes is the property of the respective owners and used under the Fair Use Act, Section 504, C2, Title 17.
Welcome to Filmstrip. I'm Jay.
And I'm Carolina. Actually, it's Nick. It's Nick.
Yeah. Wouldn't you be Wisconsinina? But anyway,
I don't live in Wisconsin anymore. I'm a Southern boy now.
And this is our review of Alien Covenant, starring Michael Fassbender twice, Catherine Waterston, Billy Crudup, Danny McBride, Carmen Ejogo, Damien Bichir, James Franco, Noomi Rapace, and Guy Pearce for a total of about 40 seconds together. Directed by Ridley Scott. Of course, this is out now in 2017. We're recording this weekend of release. $92 million budget on this one. Box office has been promising so far. I mean, it looks like it's in the lead, so I have no doubt that this thing will make its budget back, Nick. But, yeah, you know, the sequel to Prometheus, because we were so excited about that 5 years later. And 5 years later, we returned to the Alien series after having reviewed it.
We are back. Surprisingly enough, I thought Prometheus had actually put a fork in the series, disappointingly. And no, Ridley wants to prove a point that he can make another good Alien Universe movie, should we say?
Yeah, I think that's fair to say, an Alien Universe movie. Though this one, spoiler warnings should be obvious at this point, folks. But this one has a lot more of the quote stuff the fans wanted, according to what Ridley heard or read or somebody told him in between brandies and tea breaks, and he shoved it all into another movie that, you know, David had that line in the last movie that big things have small beginnings, and I'm like, yep, and we're never going to get to those big things, ever. Like, we still, and they keep saying, oh, that's in the next movie when we get to the space jockey on LV-426 and all that, and then they'll make the next one, and then it'll be like, yeah, it's in the next movie. And I'm convinced now that, like, no matter what they do, there's going to be no satisfying way to set that up at this point.
Yeah, this is kind of like, I know off air we were talking about Game of Thrones, and it's kind of like George R.R. Martin, if you ever seen that South Park episode where it's like, don't worry, it's coming. You know, the dragons and zombies, it's coming. But first we got to do this. I mean, that's kind of the thing. Yeah. And I tell you, before I saw this, I kind of came to kind of an understanding. I had to come to peace with the series. As, you know, if you go back and you listen to our podcasts on the Alien series, AVP series, Alien really holds a special place in my heart. Some kids grew up with Star Wars, some kids grew up with Star Trek, you know, and Alien was kind of my Star Wars growing up. That's the kid I was. I was just into those first two movies, into the third one to some degree, and I had the toys. I was just totally into it. And what I came to peace is that I got to accept this as a reboot. I just do. I know that that's not the intent, and we'll get into why I think that's a good way to people actually to view this series. Well, Prometheus, we'll call it Alien Prometheus and then Alien Covenant, because I got a feeling that future Blu-ray releases will rebrand Prometheus. But I just think that it's better to view this as kind of like a reboot to the series. Otherwise we're in like fucking prequel George Lucas shit right here, and freaking, Peter Jackson Hobbit stuff where it's just like, come on, guys. And here's the sad part is like, I'm a big fan of Breaking Bad and like Better Call Saul, and I'm watching this Better Call Saul series, and the way that they can just like make a solid prequel series that respects the original and doesn't freaking just, retcon or whatever the original series is amazing. And they're doing that over 30 episodes so far. And this is like 4 hours worth of movies, and we'll get into it, but I think you kind of see where I'm going here.
Yeah, I mean, and I won't disagree with you. Right now, the best work being done is on television or on series. I want to use that word television loosely because we consume television much differently than the way we used to. And I'm talking about like series, like cable, and then streaming services are making the best shows right now. Netflix produces amazing shows. Amazon's had some good ones. Hulu's got some really good ones. The Path is one I've been watching. You need to check that out if you haven't, folks. You got Aaron Paul from Breaking Bad as the lead in that, and he's fantastic. But Better Call Saul, everybody remembers how good Breaking Bad was. The best things are on series. The thing with series, though, and I have noticed this, is that the endings sometimes kind of fall flat. Like, that's the hardest thing to do, is to ever end a series, especially an episodic show. Like, how do you ever wrap it all up? Because the getting there is the fun. And sometimes they work, sometimes they don't. Sometimes you really like it at the moment, and then you watch it later and you're like, it's not really that satisfying. But I agree with you. The best stuff is strung out over long form nowadays, 10, 12 episodes at a chunk, and we get what we want out of it. But good movies are being made too, though. That's the thing. Good movies are being made. And good franchise movies can be made. And I want to say right now off the top, this is better than Prometheus. They look almost exactly the same. They look beautiful, all right? Except this one has a lot more alien stuff in it that we like. Actually, I should say aliens stuff in it that we like, because Ridley's borrowing a lot from James Cameron's look in this film. But as far as just base storyline, this one's definitely better than Prometheus. I walked out of this one and I wasn't flipping off the poster. Exactly. Now, that's not to tip my hand and say I think this is any good or not, but I didn't have that visceral reaction to it. And I wonder if I'm kind of like you, that subconsciously I made this deal with myself going into it that, hey, I'm just gonna go in and I just hope to see an alien movie. From the trailers, it looks like I'm gonna get some actual xenomorph here, and Danny McBride's usually funny, so we'll go with that. Oddly enough, he's not funny in this. They don't give him any comedy to do, but we do get a whole lot of xenomorph.
Yeah, no, we do, and I think most people I associate with really don't care for Prometheus, and just reading and listening to some of these Ridley Scott interviews about what he thought the problem is with Prometheus, and I don't think he gets it. I don't. I see a movie like his, like The Martian, and I think that's a great movie, but the reason fantastic. I think that movie is great is because it's based off a great book. He really had very limited, at least from what I understand, very limited stuff to do with the script, and then he had a great cast. Well, so he was able to make...
To be fair, though, he didn't have a lot to do with the Prometheus script. He had the idea of exploring our creation. Nobody wanted to make that, so he slapped Alien on it, and then he hired guys to write it, and then Damon Lindelof came in, as we rightly blamed forever in that last podcast on Prometheus, and did what we didn't like about it. So I don't know that Ridley had a whole lot to say about any of them, and he's hit or miss on adaptations. Have you ever seen Hannibal? Which, by the way, is a horrendous book too, but the movie is even worse. That's one of the worst sequels ever made.
I've seen it. I think it's. I can watch it because I take it as a comedy.
It's the darkest, bloodiest comedy ever.
It is. But it's so unintentionally funny in so many areas that it's just you can't. To me, it's just Silence of the Lamb exists on its own. Hannibal, Hannibal Rising. Oh Christ! That's kind of its own.
Hannibal is Batman. You mean?
Oh man, yeah, fighting Nazis with samurai swords.
Maybe one day we'll play around with that. Speaking of which, though, the Hannibal TV series. I don't know if you ever watched any of that or not. Hugh Dancy, Cillian Murphy.
It's Mads Mikkelsen.
Yeah, Mads Mikkelsen. Thank you. Awesome.
And I'll tell you this right now. I heard great things, but I'm never going to watch it because I know that we were just bringing up about how series go, and sometimes they have fulfilling endings, sometimes they don't. That series just ends, and it's like one of the series like Deadwood, where I'll never watch it because there's no ending to it. And some people are going to sit there and go, "Come on, man! There's great story, there's great acting there. I get it, but if you listen to all our reviews, I'm very much a story first guy."
Right.
I can accept some bad CGI, some bad acting, as long as the story is solid. But if I'm going into something, I'm going to invest time and hours into it, and there's going to be no ending to it, I just can't do it. To me, that's like, you're going to give me 1,000-page opus of a book, and then I'll suddenly rip out the last 100 pages and then be like, hey, you know what? It's a really good book, but you're never going to get the ending to it. And it's like, I'm just not going to sit down and invest 16 hours of my time to read those 900 pages and then just not get an ending. I'm sorry. I can't do that. Like we're saying with TV, there's so many good things on right now that to go and to start a story that's never going to have an ending, it's just, there's not enough time on the table for that.
I would would recommend just watching a couple of episodes then, just to get a feel for it, because there are some good ones, and we can talk about that another time. But, I mean, that's, again, another example of there are good franchise stories to be told. And I'm going to ask this now, and you can answer it at the end of the podcast. I'm wondering if maybe the build-up to what we know as Alien wouldn't have been better served in that medium. So just hold on to that as we get into this thing. But why don't we do a plot summary, Nick, before we get any deeper into this?
Okay. So, bound for a remote planet on the far side of the galaxy, members of the colony ship Covenant respond to a signal from a planet. That sounds familiar. While there, I'm going to say that a lot. While there, the crew, along with their android, Walter, an updated version of David from the movie Prometheus, encounters David, a synthetic survivor of the doomed Prometheus expedition. The mysterious world soon turns dark and dangerous when a hostile alien life form forces the crew to fight for survival in the strange area. After crew members are killed and do battle with the alien creatures they call the Neomorph, after rescuing the remaining crew, David reveals his activities on the planet. Using the black liquid as a catalyst, he created the earliest Neomorphs after experimenting with a parasitic creature that laid eggs inside its prey. When born, the larvae ate the prey from the inside out. Xenomorphs kill a bunch of crew until there are only 2 humans left, and they flush the remaining alien out of an air shaft into the outer space. Sounds familiar. The remaining crew re-enters stasis. Sounds familiar. Just as one of them realizes David gained control, and he's brought 2 alien embryos along for the ride in one of the most unintentionally comical scenes I've ever seen. But David records a log falsifying how the rest of the crew dies as credits roll.
Yeah, we also forgot the familiar thing of the crane fighting the queen alien too, but we'll get into that, I guess. So.
Yeah, we'll get into it, Jay.
Yeah, let's talk about our Covenant crew, and I'm going to run through the names of everyone here, but at no point should anybody who hasn't seen this movie or trying to keep up with this movie bother to know who any of these people are, because there's really only 3, maybe 4 you need to know.
I'll let you read who the crew is, but I get to do the fingering, okay?
Oh, God. We're going to talk about that scene, too. Well, you know Walter David, all right? So Walter is the... Michael Fassbender cannot do an American accent. Why did they do that? Dumb idea. But he's he's David with brown hair. All right, so he's the updated android. He's there. Then you have Daniels, who's the new Ripley. That's Catherine Waterston. And you have Tennessee, Danny McBride, who's the pilot. And then everybody else is mostly disposable. Like, if you want to remember Chris Oram as the first, lead or whatever, that's Billy Crudup. But everybody else here, Lope, Kareen, Maggie, Ricks, Upworth, Hallett, Ancor, Ledward, doesn't matter. Yeah, I mean, I couldn't tell you who was what and which order they even died. I just know that one died, ooh, that one got chest bursted, that one got ripped in half. Like, that one got decapitated. Like, there's a lot of real gory death, but I feel like I'm watching a Friday the 13th sequel. There's a bunch of camp people, and I'm like, who are the main ones? That girl and the dude, and that's all I need to know. Everybody else, fodder. And I've never thought of the Alien movies, even like the ones I didn't like Alien Resurrection. The only ones I felt like were populated with cast that was way too big just to be killed was Alien versus Predator Requiem. And maybe a little bit of AVP, but mostly Requiem, right? Like, we talked about that cast being way too many people and how they're just all there to be killed. And I feel like this would have been a lot more interesting if they pared it down a little bit.
See, that's the thing. It doesn't have to be pared down because, let's take a look at Alien. We got the characters there. You have Kane, you have Parker, you have Ash, you have Ripley, you have Dallas, you have Brett. You know what I mean? You can go through each of them right now and tell me which type of archetype they are. With Kane, it's supposed to be, your standard hero guy. Dallas is your captain. Ripley is your by-the-books, officer. Lambert, I didn't bring up Lambert, but Lambert's kind of like your, Lambert's kind of like your, almost like your, the crowd's the crowd's eyes or something like that, and also the emotional one. Parker, then you got Parker who's the the big minority guy,
the
and
tough
stuff.
one, yeah.
And then you got Brett. Yeah, then you got Brett who's kind of like the blue collar worker and stuff like that. Then you go to aliens. Okay, we got Hicks, we got Hudson, we got Vasquez, we got Gorman, we got obviously Ripley, we got Newt, we got Burke. I can even go through even some of the secondary.
You got Frost,
colonists like
Apone, you got
Warbowski, all those guys. Yeah, and so you got all those guys right there. And even when we get to Alien 3, I mean, okay, you got Dylan, you got Charles Dance's character, who I'm now kind of missing my point, right? Yeah, but you know what I mean. Then you got 88, who's the guy with the low IQ. Then you got the warden and stuff like that. And you got some memorable guys who are actually within the prison. Then you get the Alien Resurrection, which actually has a lot of memorable characters. I mean, you can go through there. You got Ron Perlman's character, you got Michael Wincott. All these guys, they all have certain archetypes to them. And even Prometheus, to a point, had characters that you could remember.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
It also had a geologist that got lost and a biologist that touched alien life forms. So those were idiots.
Yes, they're idiots, but you know what? Though you can kind of remember these guys and stuff like that. This movie, I have no freaking clue. Besides Daniels, Orem, and Tennessee, there is, kind of the somewhat good-looking girl who's on the ship next to Tennessee, and then her
his wife.
Her black husband, who, but I'm not trying to be like that guy, but I'm saying that's how he is. He's the black husband. That's the only thing you're going to know about him, is that those two are married. One's white, one's black, and then you go then you go down into the planet, and you got two guys.
You have a gay couple.
They're gay, and that's how you know them. They're the gay couple and stuff like that. There's absolutely no archetypes. There's no character development with any of these characters besides Daniels, Orem, and Tennessee. And I'd even take Orem out of there because we'll get into it with him. It's kind of laughable with some of the shit.
We all know he's going to die, though, because that's one thing I'm going to complain about this movie, too. They blew everything except the decapitation and the very end with the Queen fight. They blew everything in the trailers. And I'm like, I know you needed to tease us that we were going to get chest bursters, we were going to get this stuff, but that's obviously Billy Crudup getting killed, so I'm just waiting for him to walk in that room the whole time.
Not only that, but Ridley Scott was doing interviews, and he was fucking just blowing the entire movie about plot points.
Yeah.
Just completely there. I mean, let's just get into it. David creates, I guess you could say, this version of the Xenomorph, and Ridley Scott just comes out and says it, and I'm just like, dude, is there just no...
there's lots of things that David does, and I want to talk about David here because what we find out is that this was the planet of the engineers, right? And I'm
taking it as a planet. I'm taking it as a planet because when you get there, it happens in the middle of the movie, but there was like a full scene release before it that was only kind of partially in the movie.
Right.
They seem pretty unadvanced, if to quote George Bush here.
I don't know if it's like one of their outposts or something, but it's somewhere because that's where he and Shaw were going to go.
Were these even engineers though? Because I was watching it. They look like it to a point, but you remember the guy from Prometheus, his complexion was very like milky white.
Maybe it was because that was the atmosphere or something. I don't know. He still looked like Triple H. I mean, that was the point. He was the bald Triple H, and he wiped him out with a neutron blast or whatever after unleashing alien hell on them. I mean, to have all of this boiled down to basically a malformed science experiment. So here's part of this too that this messes with you because you start thinking about it. You're like, so wait a minute. The whole time this company has just been going after the science experiment that they created to begin with. The company has always known about the xenomorph. If we're to believe and put this in context with aliens, everything else we've known, right? Like, that's what this movie is purporting, and that it was one of the androids that did it. And I want to know when they stopped making androids as, the good-looking, fit British guys and started going with old dudes like Ash and Lance Hendrickson, Bishop. Like, when did they change model making? I mean, they did 10 Chucky films, and they make the same damn dolls the same way all the time. So I don't know when Weyland-Yutani got cheap on the effects, but they should have kept the David model. That was a much more likable, relatable thing.
I'm going to take it that when we see Blade Runner 2049, that'll answer that, because I just have the strangest feeling that Ridley Scott and his brandy state of drunkenness wants to combine these movies, because right now, with the way Prometheus and now Covenant has gone, he wants to make another Blade Runner movie. And I know he's not making it. He's like executive producing the new one, but it's like, why didn't you just make Blade Runner? It's like your interest is more upon androids and their place of creator versus, creation. You know what I mean? It's like,
yeah, he's totally interested in that. Yeah, the play.
And here's the thing, though, too. You watch the original Alien movies, the androids are there, but they're not the center focus of the movies. They are just kind of like that. Yeah, they're there as a freaking surprise. In Alien and Alien Resurrection, surprise, like, oh, this is an android. And then Aliens was basically, we're going to take it like, you think they're evil, we're going to make a good one. You know what I mean? And but they were never a main player or a main plot point. It was like a B plot for both of them.
It was the side point of things. It was the surprise in both films that one of them was evil and one of them turned out to actually be genuine and real. That was the surprise in those two films, was centered around the android, but they were not the focus. You're right. The focus was the crew. And here's the problem. We've never again established interesting characters like Ellen Ripley or any of those Marines or even the prisoners in 3. Like we talked about, 3's a mess, but like the assembly cut of 3's a watchable movie, there's something there.
But there's
characters
a good handful
there. There's people
There's a handful.
There. Yeah,
there's a handful there.
There's somebody. Even in Alien Resurrection, as much as I didn't like that movie and as silly as I think it is, there are characters there. They're caricatures, but they're characters. Like you get their motivations and things. These people's motivation is to go set up a colony. Now, the colony setup idea, I'm going to say, you know what? This is actually kind of neat. I like this. You send people with embryos and stuff. This is kind of like, we're going to take the one cool thing in Interstellar and we're going to borrow that idea. We're going to send embryos and like how to plant things. And we're going to send all these couples out there because you got to have people that are already together so you don't have to worry about wild hooking up, on the space travel. You don't have a weird sexual tension, and people who like want to be a family and a colony together, right? Like the idea of colonists setting out like pilgrims and stuff, that's neat. Like I like that setup idea. The fact that we have to make another stop along the way before we get to LV-426 again, like immediately I was like, oh, we're not even going to get there, are we? And no, we're not. Because I so wanted us to get there last time. We didn't, and we're not doing it again this time. This time we're picking up that familiar distress beacon, which is just a trap from David anyway, right? Because he knows.
It is. Yep, and let's set up the scenario here. So the movie opens up. We got Walter walking around. He's, kind of, basically the beginning of the Alien, where we're just doing kind of a slow pan through the ship. But this time we're with Walter, just like in the beginning of Prometheus, how we were with David. Actually, you know what? I skipped the part, Jay.
Yeah,
we had the beginning of it. We had the beginning with
Peter Weyland.
And it shows how. Yep, we had Guy Pearce back.
Yeah.
Yep, and he's looking old. Either that or they did better makeup this time. But he's sitting there and he meets David for the first time. David awakens and he has David play some, classical music for him and pour him some tea. And basically David asks him, if you're my creator, who's your creator? And I'm thinking too, I'm like, well, if we're going to get like that technical, it'd technically be his mom and dad. But if we're going to get like, completely spiritual here, who is it? Is it God? Is it someone else? But yeah, it's just setting up again that David Weyland always treated David kind of like a redheaded stepchild. Even though he was his creation, he was always kind of an asshole to him.
Well, but he treated him like his son, like the son he could control. Because remember the thing about Vickers, the Charlize Theron throwaway character, besides not being able to run sideways, she was also like this rebellious daughter thing, right? And so, he didn't give her any kind of love. I think he actually loved David. Now, he ordered him around because he was just an asshole. And that's what he was about. But he loved this thing like it was his son. And for all intents and purposes, it is his son. So yeah, you're right. We did miss that though. But then we do get into the setup of the Covenant, and you're right. We see Walter walking around doing stuff, and but boy, we don't waste any time, right? We get this huge. They call it the neutrino burst. It's basically what David is using to wipe out the engineers. It hits the ship and kills James Franco and some other people that it doesn't matter who they are, right? And so Walter is like, well, it's time to wake everybody up because we're gonna have to get this. But the captain dies when his pod malfunctions. And that's the thing, that if Franco's supposed to be the captain, I have to ask you, I'm like, that's on purpose, right? Like David set that up so that he could cut the head off the snake, and then the leaders weren't as, didn't have their person to rely on. Because you got to figure they trained a long time to get ready to go on this trip, and if you kill the leader immediately, that puts everybody in chaos.
I never took it like that. I just took it as just happenstance that he ended up getting killed. And I think what it was that then, they put in the reason that the script wise that they killed the captain is that they were going to put an inexperienced second in command in charge who was more worried about how people, essentially felt about him and his commands than actually doing his job. I mean, at first they kind of show him where he's like, you guys got to go out here. We can't mourn this guy. We got to get going. But then one of the side characters, who I don't even know who it is, maybe his wife, kind of was like, oh, these people are going to be your neighbors one day. And then that's when they get the distress call from essentially what we turn out is Shaw singing some, John Denver song. And
which is weird.
Okay, Jay. Going to a distant planet, what is the worst motivation for that? Cave paintings or a John Denver song? I just have to throw that out there.
Gosh, I don't know. Like the fact that I get the John Denver. At least the John Denver song has a haunting weirdness to it. The cave paintings, like we talked about last time, they could have been saying, "Don't go there." For all we knew, they were. Of course, they looked like they had been drawn last week. I'll say this: there's nobody in this crew that's as useless or dumb as that biologist, geologist, or that the character Logan Marshall Green played. It was Shaw's better half or other half.
Yeah, the poor man's Tom Hardy. Yes.
Yeah, that guy. There's nobody in the crew that's that contemptible that I hate. But I like the fact though that there is a bit of mutiny under Orem, who just assumes, control, because in line of secession, that is his job. But you know what? This is another friggin' Star Wars Force Awakens thing here. It's a callback, because remember when they go down to the planet in Alien and they come back and not Ash, Kane has the thing on his face, and Ripley's in command, and she's like, no, quarantine, no, I'm in charge. Dallas is off the ship, I'm in charge, and Lambert overrides it along with Ash because they break the chain of command. I'm like, it's the same thing again. Like, Ripley's wanted to play the greatest hits for everybody with a new band. It's like if you go watch whatever iteration of Van Halen's out there right now, you ain't watching the good Van Halen. All right, you're just hearing a group calling themselves Van Halen trying to play those songs.
Yep, no, exactly. I mean, this is kind of like a greatest hits of Alien, Prometheus for some reason, and then Aliens throughout the movie. And there's some of Alien 3's Dread throughout here as well. But yeah, I mean, so
they want it to be. That's the thing. They want it to be, but they have none of the atmosphere that. None of this looks like anything like what Fincher shot and what they were doing. Like it's so much more Aliens and Prometheus than anything the way it looks. And the score too. The score is so Prometheus to me. It just feels like they just reused it.
Well, and then they brought in a lot of the musical cues from Alien in here.
Oh, I mean, it's because again, like Force Awakens, member berries. I remember that. Yeah, I mean, I swear, man, the South Park guys are onto something. Like, movies have been doing this to us, and we're just now realizing it.
Yeah. So they get this distress call, and the captain basically is like, okay, we're going to go down there. So they go down there and are just, kind of exploring it and everything like that. And all of a sudden there's these little crunchable formations on the ground where it infects two of the people that are down there exploring, and what it is almost like a mist that goes up into the air and goes inside their body.
It's an alien spore. Yeah, I mean, I was watching that and I was getting War of the Worlds, the Steven Spielberg one that I hate that you love, vibe off of it. Ledward and Hallett are the ones that get inadvertently affected.
Well, I got to bring this up, though, too. I remember one of the biggest complaints about Prometheus is okay, you got these scientists and they're going to this strange world and they're wearing spacesuits in the beginning, and then they take off their helmet because they're oh, it's breathable and stuff like this. I think this is kind of an FU to the audience from Ridley, where he's they're not even going to bring down space helmets here. Okay, I don't
this
care.
This whole movie is like that. This whole movie feels like Ridley going, all right, you wanted it, you got it, screw yourself.
I mean, you look at Alien and Aliens. Yeah. It's just it made sense. It was like in Alien, they're down there, they're wearing spacesuits, everything like that. You know, they got out of here. In Aliens, it was like, we're not going to, we can't have the Marines in spacesuits. You know what I mean? It's just not going to work. So you know what we're going to do? They terraformed the planet and made it breathable and stuff like that. And it's like, okay, I can, I can go with that. I can go with that. But they go down to this planet again, and there's just like, there's no talk about like, oh yeah, it's breathable air, and we did an analysis, and there's no germs or microorganisms. Okay, I've read stuff on like time travel, how it's like, hey, you know what, if there was a thing as time travel and you went back 200 years, you would probably die because of the germs and the conditions of that area. Even the food that you would eat, your body would not be able to adapt to it that quick, and you would freaking either get very, very sick or you would die. And it's just like, again, it's just like, we're going to go down to a planet. I mean, it's Star Wars logic here, but the thing is, though, Star Wars, it's fantasy. This is science fiction. And where is the science? Well, I'm just I'm just not seeing it. Yeah,
this
there's
is
no
fiction,
science.
Horror. The first 30 minutes of this movie. The first 30 minutes of this movie wants to be a sci-fi movie. The last 2/3 of it want to be a friggin' horror movie. And that's all it is. It turns into a horror movie, and that can work. Like, there are good sci-fi horror movies. Alien, good example. There are other ones. You know, Event Horizon is a good sci-fi horror movie. You know, like, it's a little underappreciated in some ways, but I liked it. I think it works well. You know, you could even stretch and say the first Matrix is a little bit of a horror movie. That's horrific to think about. You know, in some ways it's more actiony, but it's a sci-fi horror, you know, landscape. But this movie wants to be everything at once, and it's like it's on caffeine the whole time. And that's the other thing too. God, I don't know why Ridley is obsessed with this friggin' shaky cam thing. Every time we have a fight scene, it's like every movie does this now, but he does it so bad. I'm like, just set the thing still. If it looks that bad, don't put it on screen. And that's the other thing too, like, could you tell when they were doing CGI aliens versus people in suit aliens? Because it was pretty obvious to me.
Yeah, it was. I mean, the CGI in this movie was pretty obvious throughout. Yeah. But yeah, it's just, I mean, I'm not trying to harp on it and stuff like that. I get it that, you know, a lot of movies like this come out and we just kind of give it the benefit of the doubt. It's just something that the first Alien movie went to great lengths to set up as far as how these people are going to act and, you know, common sense decisions and, you know, emotional versus, you know, going by the book. And it just seems like it's just like, hey, we're just gonna totally ignore that aspect of, you know, the first two movies, even the first three movies, and just kind of like, hey, this is just gonna be, you know, we're gonna mix a lot of fantasy and magical shit into here, and it just to me it doesn't stick. I mean, even like, again, let's bring up the point with, you know, these spores get into their bodies and create this gigantic life form, and I'm just like, I don't know, it's just
sense. How did that 6'5" thing erupt from that, you know, 5'10" man? That is so ridiculous. I mean, it's neat. The neomorph is kind of cool. Like, I'm not gonna lie, the white alien, like, that's kind of neat. I'm like, well, that's better than that shark fin thing that we had last time. It's a much better version of that. And I like the way that it mauls people to death. And, you know, you got the one person who's trying to shoot it and hits the gas tank. I'm like, that's like Jaws 2, lady. I know you've seen that. You know, if you haven't, shame on you because you just blew everybody up. So there goes the damn lander and, you know, a bunch of the cast, right? Because that's how this goes. But and then you have another one come from the dude's throat to kill him. The problem is like they keep playing with the how fast these alien life forms mature, and there's no consistency to it. It's like, you know, in Alien, that took time for that little shrimp-looking rabbit to become the full alien, right? We've never really known the actual lifespan time. We just know it's not like immediate, right? And sometimes they come out and they're ready to go, and sometimes they're kind of small and look like puppets on a string and doing the Michigan J. Frog dance, you know, and then other times they're not. You know, it's so inconsistent. I'm like, this is like AVP again. You know, did no one think, or is this what we're supposed to say, is that it's so out of control, this experiment, that you never get consistent results? Like, if that's what they're trying to say, I needed David to say that, or somebody else scientifically motivated to go, this is insane. You can never control, like, morphing that alien organism with humans because they're not compatible. I don't care what the damn DNA scan says.
Well, my other thing too is, okay, like when these neomorphs, like there's, when one of the guys gets infected, he gets brought back to the ship, and they open up the med bay, and this woman, did she purposely lock that door, or was that by accident?
Yeah, no, she totally quarantines them inside that med bay. That's the one. That's the difference. Is Ferris is like, no, we are quarantining, and like they go along with it. Like that's part of the gig, and nobody argues. So she did it on purpose.
Yeah, well, the one woman was arguing, though, pretty quick, though, when the thing started bursting out, and she wanted out. I'm just like, man, just let her out. But even if you did, I mean, that thing got out, obviously. But
it didn't matter,
I guess my question, though, too, is, and this is one of my problems with Alien 3, is you watch the first Alien, and the alien gets out, and I always took it as like it killed the first couple people because the people were hunting it. It was a reaction from it for survival. In Aliens, it wasn't killing people. It was cocooning them to basically continue continue breeding them and, continuing more.
Well, they were fighting a battle. Like that. Yes. That's what they were doing. Yeah.
But in this one, it's like, and like, I was thinking like Alien 3 and Aliens where it's like, it's just going to kill you and stuff like that. And I'm just like, okay, is it, are we going back? Is this eating it? Is stuff like that? Because it seems like it's just wanting to kill them just to kill them. And again, it's people.
I'm so glad you said that, man, because we have changed the motivation of these aliens so long ago that they are just killing machines. But you are dead on right. Those first two films, these were just instinctual insects. They just were protecting home and just trying to stay alive. And look, I'm not one to, totally defend and, all these different creatures and things like that, like they're humans or whatever. But if you are crazy enough to go and get in the way of alligators and sharks and then act surprised when one of them tries to nibble on you because it doesn't know what you are, you're just not paying attention to the world. That's just the way this is the way it is. If you go into something else's habitat, it's going to defend itself the same way you would in yours. These things, though, operate like friggin' mass murdering machines. Like they're predators. Yeah. They act like the Predator does. That somewhere along the way, we decided that the alien had the same motivation as the Predator from the Predator movies, and it's a killing. Instinct is to murder and kill when its real instinct is just survival. Was at least from the original film, right?
Yeah, it is. And I know I look at a lot of classic sci-fi monster movies where it's like, let's look at The Thing. Mm-hmm. It wasn't killing people to kill people. It was growing. It was trying to survive. It was taking over people to basically get the other people so it could keep on taking over them. Even Jaws, the shark eats to eat. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. It's got to eat to have nourishment to continue going on.
Well, it swims, eats, and makes little sharks. That was the line. It's exactly. A great line, and that's all it does. So.
Exactly. And it's like, those are intelligent horror movies where it's like, it knows, the monster has a reasonable motivation to be doing what it's doing, whether it's instinctual nature or just trying to survive. And when we start turning things into just like, it's going to kill to kill, and then now suddenly we're in Jason's territory where it's like, you're just going to kill to kill. And it's just like, this series was better than that. It was, but that boat has sailed so long ago, though, man, that I'm not surprised this is happening. And we're getting like gory stuff this time too. I'm like, man, they haven't gone gory in an alien movie like this since AVP Requiem. Like that, most of them, even Resurrection, which had a lot of killing in it and stuff, was pretty classic and almost a little stylized. It was a little tongue in cheek, the first two films weren't gory at all. They were friggin' atmospheric and scary. This movie is gross. I mean, there's throat popping and back breaking and blood and decapitation. And I mean, we get everything. It is Jason. It is like the bloodiest friggin' Jason movie you can think of. Well, even in Alien, okay, we had the chest burster scene. Gross, but that was to shock. You know what I mean? That was like, we're going to sit everybody in the mood. But when it killed Brett, no gore. When it killed, Dallas, no gore. When it killed Dallas and Lambert, very little gore was involved in that.
There's almost nothing. It was all music and shots. It was artistic.
I mean, minusing like airbrushing Sigourney Weaver's butt crack in the end of the movie, you could basically play that movie on regular, TV without any edits in it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Same with Aliens. I mean, it's just like why those movies are rated R was, of course, the language, but then also the, how it made you feel and how tense it was. It wasn't that it was over the top gory. And even Alien 3 wasn't over the top gory at all. Okay, you got a couple of the second mouth shots, skulls cracking for a couple frames, blood, and then that was it. And this one is like these guys are vomiting up buckets of blood and everything like that. And I'm just like, again, this series, at least I always felt was better than that.
You know what? It started out better than that, but let's be honest, Nick. It hasn't been better than that for a long time. Resurrection was a cheese fest. AVP and AVPR were abortive attempts at crossovers and just cash grab action craziness, and AVPR in particular was supposed to be this hard R by a couple of effects dudes who are millionaires for being effects dudes, and that's what they did. They showed off gory effects. Prometheus had a lot of gore in it too. It was mostly alien goo gore and stuff like that, but there was a lot of gore. I mean, the first 2 minutes we see somebody disintegrate. We see a humanoid thing disintegrate from the DNA all the way out. And we get a lot of kills and things like that. And we see a friggin' abortion done by a machine. I mean, you can't get any grosser, right? And then this movie is just like, well, we're just going to chop everybody's face off and linger on the blood. It's not like Rob Zombie, like rub your face in it gore. It's not like that make you uncomfortable. It's just like you look at it, and I'm with you. I'm like, wasn't this better than this? I guess this is where we are now, though. We're just, it's Attitude Era, and we're just going to show our butts and say suck it and cut each other. Like we're getting color all over this thing. And screaming all over and I'm so glad this wasn't in 3D or something, because I can just imagine all that crap just flying at me or something. I'm so glad I didn't go and see that this time. I saw Prometheus in 3D, and for like a couple of those scenes, it was worth it. It was so beautiful. It was that map room and all that stuff. This, I'm like, oh, I'm so glad this was 2D, because that would have been horrible, right? So we get though what goes on, because the remaining crew members are trying to radio Covenant for help, right? The people that are on the ground, and they get killed by more neomorphs, right? This is what's happening. And Walter loses a hand saving Daniels. And this is something that's interesting. Walter has like Logan blood in him, right? Because he can regenerate from healing. He gets stabbed in the throat or in the chin, and he like grows the wound back. But he doesn't grow a hand back this time around. Or is he just not around long enough to see the hand grow back?
You see, I guess this technology was stopped when Alien actually came out, because of course, when Ash got his head knocked off and stuff like that, he was blooding up and shooting stuff out pretty good. And Bishop, I guess those are more significant wounds per se, but we've never seen this like automatic healing regeneration in any of the other movies. Even like Call, I mean, didn't she get like a gunshot wound to herself, and like she had like a big milky opening and stuff, and then
and Ripley fingered her milky hole, let's just say it. So yeah, I mean, look, there was all kinds of like wounds, and she couldn't heal from it. Like they had to bandage her up.
Yeah, again, this is just more, like I said, you got to take these two movies as like it's a new thing, because just so much of this stuff is not adding up to what the original ones are. And again, you can sit there and go, well, come on, man, you're trying to tell a story here, and of course things are going to change, but it's like, you know what? Ridley Scott made the first one.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
That's
and
the
it's
thing, is if you're trying to tell a side story to what already exists, that's one thing. But
follow the rules you set up.
Yeah,
follow the rules you set up.
Yeah, but what you're telling me and you're telling your audience is this is what led us to that ship on LV-426 with the giant thing with the chest bursted out of it and that layer full of eggs, which meant there was a queen involved. There was all this like. That's what we know from the first two movies. And you're telling us you're going to tell us how we got there. As misguided as a lot of the prequel stuff in the Star Wars films was, those first three Star Wars films, we've talked about it. George Lucas led us up to where he wanted us to be before we got to A New Hope. Right? And even, look, even back at Rogue One, and we didn't talk about this on our review of it, but it hit me the last time I watched Rogue One. It's like, wait a minute. Darth Vader comes out and is a freaking samurai and wipes out all these rebels, and like 25 minutes later, he can barely walk? Like, what happened? Did he like get zapped? Did he get shot? Did we miss it? You know, again, you don't play by your own rules. You're creating something cool that, again, in the moment kind of works. But if I apply any thought to it, if I try to connect this to the rest of its organism, to carry the metaphor here, it doesn't fit. It doesn't work. And look, all of this is David's fault. You know, like, or his doing, right? Like, we find out because he tells this great lie about how.
Well, we got to set up though how David got there though. So they're getting attacked by a bunch of other neomorphs. I don't know where these other ones came from. I guess from the engineers or whatever population was left there. So I guess it creates this. Yeah, and so he comes there, shoots a flare, scares him off, and brings him back to his lair where he's like, hey, I'm David, and, you know, basically I was, you know, the guy on the doomed Prometheus ship that no one knows what happened to. And, yeah, so he's, you know, starts getting into a little bit of backstory on stuff and everything, so blah, blah, blah.
How long is it between Prometheus and Covenant here? I missed it if they said.
I was thinking like 10 years.
It might have been, it's got to have been a significant enough time that, one, they can make the advancements that they've made in the David model, but also that people know that Weyland is dead. Peter Weyland is dead. You know, they figured that out. That they know Prometheus was lost. They don't, have anything. What did you make of his lie, though? That he tells them that when they arrived, that it accidentally released a bioweapon that killed the native population, and the ship crashed, and that's what killed Shaw, which is not what happens, right? Like, I took it as she fixed him, and he killed her so he could have a human to experiment on.
Well, yeah, that's exactly, I think, what happened was that he essentially admits to it that he ends up killing her. You know, he ends up wanting to experiment on her and everything. They don't really explain how the ship crashed. I don't know. To me, I take it as, this is me reading between the lines, that after they killed all the engineers or something like that, he woke Shaw up and she saw what he did and tried to pilot the ship out of there or something, and there was a struggle between them and they ended up crashing the ship, and then he ended up killing her because he felt like she betrayed him or something like that, and then he ended up we find out that he experimented on her, and
that's a horrific looking thing too. I mean, they talk about something that's just gross, like that whatever's left of Shaw that we see in that scene, that is so grotesque.
Yeah, that's the whole thing is like.
But it's not grotesque like Giger grotesque was. Like, I want to make that clear. Like, how Giger stuff was really grotesque looking, but it was cool too because it was so biomechanical, right? Like, this just looks like the science experiment gone wrong. Like, or if you remember back to high school when you had to work on the frog and like it had been open for a few days, that's kind of what it looked like. It was like, it was really, the formaldehyde was gone. It was bad.
Yep, and. Yeah, it was just gross. Are we to take it that, we later find out, I mean, not much really happens here. I mean, they're all kind of like going back and forth and everything. And then, the characters are kind of exploring these caves, and one of the people is killed by a rogue neomorph that comes in there, and the captain ends up killing it. And then, like, David takes the captain down to his lair, which, again, stupid people doing stupid things.
Yeah, I mean, he tricks him in there, and like that again, the scene I was looking for, and I'm like, when he walked through the door, I'm like, here's where Billy Crudup's going to get it, because it's like it.
You just witnessed one of your crew member, or you saw that one of your crew members was killed by this thing, and then how David was freaking out that you killed it, and then you're just like, hey, I'm going to follow him and not really, ask, too many questions about really, what the fuck's your deal, man? I mean, I get that he did kind of ask him, like, what's going on, but it's like, to follow him into his lair is just dumb. To me, it would be like, okay, I'm going to shoot him, blow him apart, or I'm going to say, screw you, and go get the rest of the crew and tell them what exactly happened.
Exactly. I kill the thing that decapitates my, fellow crew member here, and you lose your stuff over it. Well, clearly you're way too connected to that. I've got another android who, by the way, can heal himself, so bump you. And I mean, really, that's what you do. You shoot the thing. Like, even the first Predator movie, which is kind of dumb, or sort of more like jockish, it's just guns and muscles and blah, all this stuff. Dutch would have blown him away and been like, whatever, and moved on.
Let's take a look at this in Aliens. As soon as after Ripley and Newt are almost, taken down by the facehugger and stuff like that, what do? It was frickin' Burke. Let's ice this motherfucker right now.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah, Hudson wanted to shoot him on the spot. And then Hicks is even like, yeah, we're going to kill him, no offense. You know, and I mean, like, they were all about, like, nuke it from orbit, screw this. Yes, that is the correct response. This isn't even where we're supposed to be. I want to be Dante from Clerks. We're not even supposed to be here. Obviously, this is a bad idea. Let's leave. But we've got to explore the layer. So we get the face hugger, of course.
Well, yeah, but he goes in there and there's these eggs. So what does the captain do? Let's look directly into one as it opens up. I mean, it's just like you see that stuff and it's just like, I'm out of here. You know what I mean? It's just like
that's not going to work. Yeah. But it leads us, though, that David is... You know, he tried to communicate with the Neomorph, and this is where we learned that, no, he actually released all this crap on him and has been working on it, and he's got this incubation chamber because he wants to see, well, the Neomorph is what happens when this alien black goo stuff that we still don't know what it is, caviar or whatever, it comes from an engineer. What happens when I get it in a human? You know, because whatever he did with Shaw, obviously that didn't work out too well. So
I was trying to do some, like, you know, again, Ridley, if you're going to shock us, you know, what would have been great though is, like, you remember from Prometheus how Shaw was unable to conceive kids.
Right.
That was one of the plot points. There was that she was unable to, you know, give birth, and that was the whole thing about her, you know, giving birth or whatever to that squid thing. It's like, what if, like, David had used, like, her, like, eggs inside of her to actually create these eggs or something, and it was like, hey, she finally was able to actually create life.
Hey,
you know what I mean?
That would have been awesome. And again, that could have been 2 lines, and I would have bought it.
I think it would have been a nice, like, oh, fuck, you know, moment where it's just like, you know, like, wow, okay, you got some balls here for actually going there. But again, they don't do it. But, okay, so the captain gets a face hugger on his face, and, like, I thought this was kind of funny where David's kind of, as he's laying there, you know, with the thing gestating inside of him, he's like throwing peanuts at him. And I just was like, that is just so random. It was funny. But
that's David, though, because we watch what he did, you know, in the beginning of Prometheus. And then even the way he did stuff, like when he stirred the drink for Shaw's man, you know, to infect him with the goo or whatever. He's always been like this smarmy asshole. You know, I mean, this is what he is, and he clearly does not care who's getting killed. He just wants to see what happens, and that's the thing for me is I don't understand. Is David just running experiments just because he wants to learn, or is it that whole bit where he gets later with Walter and he talks about, no, you can be a creator too. Like he learned how to be a creator, and this is him just getting off on that. Like artificial intelligence just enjoys that kind of jolly.
I guess. I think it's just, you know, getting back to, you know, Prometheus and like the creators created humans because they could. Mm-hmm. Wayland created David because he could. I guess David's creating the stuff because he can.
Well, I guess that's kind of the whole point. He said, how disappointed would you be if you met your creator and that's what they told you? And it's almost like he's trying to go to the next level. I don't know, but I guess we're at the point now where we got to talk about the Walter and David scene, or AKA Michael Fassbender makes out with himself. Because that is that supposed to shock me and make it weird? Because I'm like, not really seen it. Yeah, I feel like James Bond in Spectre, who says that's my first time seeing that, Ridley.
Yeah, when did David become like, I got to kiss someone before I like kill him or like betray him? And that was a weird character thing. But one thing I actually did want to bring up, and I just actually dawned on me today, was like, if you look at the producers of the Alien series, it was David Giller and Walter Hill. Mm-hmm. Obviously, David and Walter. It was a call. Obviously, it's a callback to them. Maybe kind of a slap in the face, considering it's like David wants to create something just to, you know what I mean, just to destroy it or something. I don't know.
No, they're still involved in this, so I guess it is a callback. It's a nod to them, but I don't know. I mean, they have that whole both playing the flute thing, and it's like it's all in the fingering. You handle the blowing, I handle the fingering. And I gotta admit, I was like, "Oh, that's a terrible line." But did you
get a laugh when he said?
I chuckled. I'm gonna admit, yes, I'm a 8th grader. I chuckled at it. I was like, "Ha ha," you know. And then I felt bad about it immediately. But I was like, "Well, yep, that served its purpose." I chuckled at it. You know, the same way I chuckled at like when Poe Dameron's looking at Kylo Ren that first time. He's like, "Who talks first? You talk first, or I talk first?" You know, like I chuckled at that, and then I felt stupid about it later, but I still laughed at it. I mean, it got a reaction out of me. So it's the only bit of levity in this whole film, though. This film is just friggin' gore action to the wall for 2/3 of it. So at least they had a moment of slowing it down just a second. But all it is so that David can disable Walter. And it's supposed to set up this ending that we're supposed to be surprised that David figures out how to look like Walter or whatever, except if you pay attention, he's not healing the same way. So I'm like, I never for once thought that was Walter on the ship. I thought David had just maybe turned good for a second, but nope. So
I want to get back though to like, we got the captain who's impregnated and like he wakes up and what did he say to David? It was like something like, again, like the captain, I don't think we really talked about this too much, was that he's very religious. That's like his big thing, is that he's religious. He makes comments like, I have to tend to my flock and everything
he's
like that. He's
scientific and he's a man of faith. So he's kind of like Shaw's father, I guess, if you wanted to say. Like he's supposed to be that mix. Because Shaw was the same way. She was religious and also a science person. She made a big deal about that. So I guess he's supposed to be the same kind of thing.
Yeah, same type of thing. But it's like he wakes up and it's not even like, what the hell did you do to me or whatever. It's like he's got to talk about like faith again. And it's just like, okay, yeah, just get this guy off the screen. And luckily the xenomorph comes out. And what did you make of this scene? Like the alien bursts out of his chest. So he puts his hands up and then the alien gets up and does like jazz hands.
No, like he bows up on him. I was like, when have we ever seen an alien do never have the only one that's ever done anything close to that was the freaky Ripley's clones kid thing at the end of Alien Resurrection when it wanted to hug. Pumpkinhead did that.
It was very strange. I guess we can always take this that this xenomorph is not the one that we know, that this is like some type of David's creation or something, but still it was
Can I give you another read of it? I think Crudup's holding his hands out in like the Christ pose, basically. And if we're to take anything from these things, that they are a version and a replicated version of the thing that they burst from in some way, like it maintains some of its characteristics, like we've talked about that before. That's been set up in the universe. Then maybe this alien's like, okay, we'll do that. And that's just what it does. I think that's what it's supposed to be. I'll be honest with you, but it doesn't work. Like I wasn't thinking about that at the time. I thought, What is he doing? Does he want to lock up? Does he want to hug? What is that? I wonder if I ever seen an alien bow up on somebody. Like, that is so weird. It was really off-putting. And I think because, again, with everything they're doing here, they couldn't have set that up in some way. Couldn't even had David say some of that kind of stuff. Like, again, that's simple dialogue. That's exposition. This movie's full of it. And they can't get anything that's, like, remotely useful in there like that. But, I mean, this is a badass xenomorph, though, man. I mean, it matures quick and it starts ambushing folks. We got more facehuggers jumping around. We're killing people. I mean, it's Looney Tunes.
Yeah. There's, the crews, one guy gets a facehugger on him for like 5 seconds, and we'll get into it a little bit more later.
The timing of these things makes no sense at all.
I'm just like kind of to the point where it's like, if you can implant an egg in you in like 5 seconds and the thing can gestate in like 15 minutes, what's even the point of having a fucking face hugger? It's like, just have the alien come out of the big egg or something like that, because it's just it's just like pop, done. And it's just like, that's not the way this should work. There should be a little bit of like, again, science and actually to this instead of magic. But yeah, so we get the new xenomorph, who's a little bit more streamlined than the ones that we know. It's not as mechanical looking as the other ones, and it's jumping around like a puma and like killing everybody. And Daniels ends up getting out of there with one of the guys who got a little bit of acid on his face, who had the face hugger on him for like 5 seconds. And then, Tennessee, there's a whole plot with Tennessee trying to get the ship down closer to the Earth. So, this planet, because there was a storm coming down. They couldn't land the ship to rescue everybody.
I will say, again, another shot ruined by the trailer, that xenomorph jumping on the front of the glass. And like, what the hell is that? Like, that was good. Like, I hate that got ruined in the trailer for me, because that was such a good shot. Like, that looked cool.
Yeah, I mean, it's cool. He brings down like this, basically like a transportation vehicle, and he picks up Daniels and the other guy. And even before this, though, we get Walter, who turns himself back on.
Yeah, he does Terminator 2. He reroutes his power. And I was like, wow, we're just going to rip James Cameron off all the way.
Yep. So then we get the Mortal Kombat scene where him and David are fighting, and Walter ends up beating the shit out of him, and he has a rock over him ready to smash his head. And then we see David reaching for a knife, and then that's it. And then like 2 minutes later, we see who we had is told is Walter coming out of there, but it turns out it's David. And, at the end of the movie, that's the twist. But to me, it's like, okay, within like those 2 minutes, David was able to kill Walter, steal his suit, go back, get some alien embryos that he swallows, comb his hair so it looks like Walter, and then get out there.
Yeah,
so that's pretty efficient. That's efficient, man. I need like 20 minutes in the morning to get ready on like a really, really good day if I'm running late. He's able to do that like in 90 seconds. So
I had to go to work this morning, okay? I had to be there at 6 a.m. the day we were recording this. I got up at 5:41, and I was there at 6:03. So I'm the same way. About 20 minutes to like get dressed, get my stuff on, and drive the 10 minutes I had to drive to get to work. And I'm watching, I'm looking at this, and I'm going like, this. There's no twist to this. You said this is a twist. This is not a surprise. I just thought maybe they like melded together and like the good of Walter got into David's circuits or something. I don't know. Like, because again, it cuts away and I'm like, that's so stupid. And the thing is that gets me about that is if you're going to do that, if you're going to try to pull that cheap trick, Ridley, give me a flashback where we see how he got away from Walter and killed him. Like, show me how he did it. Like, you showing me everything else. You can't show me how he did it, even as a flashback on the ship after we know it. Or whatever, like I needed that, and don't tell me that's on the cutting room floor somewhere because I'm tired of Ridley Scott movies that have to have extra editions when they're released.
Well, what about this? What if it was Walter actually? What if they did it where Walter actually killed David, but David said something to him in the end, like something about
turned him. In other words.
Yeah, kind of like influenced them where Walter was like, maybe David's correct or something like that. He takes up David's mission.
That would have been cool.
In the end, it's Walter, coughing up the xenomorph thing, and it's like, oh boy,
what did he say?
What happened here?
Well, okay, what happened? Think about it like this. We're going to play this whole faith metaphor or whatever. That's the story of Saul to Paul. You have this guy who's persecuting and murdering Christians who then encounters Jesus on the road to go murder some Christians, and all of a sudden he becomes like the most prolific preacher of the Gospels, of the Word, and building the church in the first century. Why not have something like that where we find out how David turned him? That would have been much cooler than Switcheroo Scooby-Doo, which is what we get.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it would have been much more powerful to have it be where, David was able to take a creation and mold it into, finishing up his work or something like that. I think it would have been much more poetic for this movie to have that as opposed to like, big switcheroo that really doesn't make any logistical sense at all from it. But anyways, so it's David Walter that gets onto the ship. The guy who's impregnated that we later find out, and Daniel's at Tennessee flying it, and then the xenomorph gets on there. And we get the big action scene of Daniel's fighting the xenomorph, and basically they,
that was
Tennessee
right out of Aliens third act, man. That was the Ripley on the ship versus the Queen again.
Yeah,
what I hated about that was that it was like 2 minutes long. Like that is a cool looking shot of that Queen on top of the ship, and then it's just like, let me get that big claw arm and squish you. The end. And I'm like, that sucks. I wanted a better fight than that.
Yeah, it was super quick, and so after they crushed the alien with this big crane claw, they end up getting back up to the ship, and everything seems all calm. But then all suddenly, nope, there's something going on in the ship, and then of course we get the Lambert and Parker kind of death again. Yep,
yes.
Yep. We had the two couples there, and they're making out in the shower, and the alien appears behind it, and you get the tail going up between the female's legs, and it ends up mouthing through the husband, the guy in his his face, and then he ends up killing the other female. That feels
like a Jason kill, though. How many times has Jason killed couples together in the shower, in the bed? Pool.
It does, but to me it was such like, okay, we're doing the alien thing again, because even then after that we have Daniels comes down there and she sees the dead bodies and it's like, oh my god, same exact thing happened in Alien.
Yeah, exactly. It's the same thing, but they go for the same answer too. They just, Walter David, Tennessee and Dallas corner the xenomorph in the bay and flush it into space. And this is what's amazing about this is David has learned, don't freak out when they kill your alien. Pet. Just, okay, it's cool because I've got two more here and I've got these two idiots and it's not going to matter. That's the interesting part is he doesn't lose his stuff the way he did when the Neomorph got killed by Orem earlier. It's like he's learned something, and they flush it out into space again, and I'm like, like you said, seen that before. I was like, that almost looked like the same shot reused.
It was. Of course, we're going to flush the alien out like the first two movies, and even the fourth one where it has the window abortion of the alien sucking on the space. But to me, I think David here, if you're going to think about this logically, I think he wanted them to get rid of that alien. And the reason being is we've seen in the other movies that the alien doesn't distinguish between people and androids so much. It will kill them. I mean, the alien queen did it, the bishop, and, the aliens were attacking Call and, Alien, 4. So, I mean, to have Tennessee and Daniels get killed, what would have David done with the alien on the ship? He couldn't just leave it in there just to roam around because, the thing may attack him. It may decide to okay, well, I'm going to start preying on those 2,000, colonists that are, or the embryos or whatever. Or it might just, fuck shit up really bad on the ship and they end up crashing. So to me, it was I think he wanted him to kill it because it's the, means for the end. He's got to be able to get that ship into, flight mode to get over to this new planet because, of course, in the end, Tennessee goes into hyperspace, and then we have Daniels talking to who she presumes is Walter, and there's this whole subplot, not even a subplot, but just like a mention in the beginning of the movie that her and James Franco's goal was when they get to this new planet, they wanted to make a log cabin on a lake, and she asks Walter, she's like, oh, can you, when we get there, are you going to help me build the cabin? And he doesn't know what she's talking about. And then she realizes, oh my God, this isn't Walter, this is David. She starts screaming as she ends up passing out in the hypersleep as it, puts her to sleep.
Yeah.
Yep. And then Walter starts walking around and tells Mother to open up the doors, and it starts playing the, that classical song from the beginning that he played to Wayland as he walks through and vomits up 2 alien embryos, which again, okay, if we're going to, he was smart enough to put the alien embryos inside of them, inside little capsules that he knew would exactly fit into the slots that the people were keeping human embryos.
Right.
I just was kind of like, my God, that's a lot to swallow. That's a lot to swallow.
I guess you could figure. I mean, let's just play it out here. I'm not saying this is the way it should be, but just to play how this works. If we're to understand that he took out Walter or whatever, he probably downloaded everything Walter knew about the ship into his memory banks. Because how the hell else would he know how to do anything? This is way beyond his. So that makes sense that he would know that information. He's like, oh, okay. Well, oddly enough, these fit. But hey, go back to Prometheus. We're all the same DNA anyway. So apparently, it doesn't matter.
But again, it would have made more sense if that was actually Walter. You know what I mean?
Yes, I agree.
In the end,
yes,
yeah. It's just, to me, it's just again, how did he do that in 90 seconds? You know what I mean? Like I said, he was able to change, comb his hair, go get these embryos, and I guess he had face hugger embryos that were. It's just so much to swallow.
It is. Look, before we give thoughts about where this is going and things like that, let's wrap this up. Popcorn ratings on Alien Covenant. I'm going to tell you I never get to go first. I'm going first this time, damn it. I'm going to tell you right now, like I said in the beginning, looks like Prometheus, much more interesting of a story. It's stupid. It's a lot of fun to look at, but it's gory. It's not what this series deserves, and it's not the best it's been by far. Okay, just put that out there. But this is far more rewatchable than Prometheus. I mean, not even close. I tried to rewatch Prometheus again before I went to look at this, and I couldn't do it. I got past the beginning, and I was like, we got to the cave drawings, and I was like, no, I'm not doing this. I got 2 hours. I got something else I just got to do. This movie is better than that. But it's not nearly as good as it could have been. It's not near where it was before. And I have a theory about that. The thing about Alien and Aliens that I don't hear brought up enough is both of those directors at that time in their lives were young. They were new to doing this. They didn't have reputations. They were trying to build them. And like we've talked about before, a lot of times when you get a great director and you look at their early stuff and they really have a big hit, it's because they're desperate and they don't have time to muck it up. They do the right thing, and it works, And now Ridley's had years to overthink this property, and clearly he has. If he had any input into the way this went, and the writers did too. They've had all these years to overthink this, and what you get is this jumbled mess in the end. And that to me is the definition of medium popcorn. That medium popcorn that is middling and frustrating because it could be good, but doggone it just refuses to be. It's so frustrating to once again go down the road with Alien here and hope I'm going to get something really interesting and just get a lot of gags. So for me, I'm going to say medium popcorn, but gosh, I mean, I'm not as dissatisfied as I was with this with Prometheus, but I kind of feel bad leaving it on a little bit of an uptick because I don't know where they're going from here. So your ratings.
I'm going to go with medium popcorn too. It's not as bad as Prometheus. I think we said that in the beginning where it's like, it's better than that. And I'll probably end up buying this movie and I'll probably end up watching it, a couple other times. It's nowhere. It doesn't rank anywhere near 1, 2, or 3, in my opinion. I've actually, over the years, even since we've done our podcast, I guess appreciated 3 a little bit more. And I think that a lot of that is based upon what's come after it and how it's just like, maybe that was the best possible story that we could get at the time, because there was a lot of stuff going on when that movie was coming out. And I think, looking at what we got, it's more than probably what we deserved as far as for an Alien movie.
It wasn't the movie we needed. It was the Alien movie we deserved.
Yeah. The quote Nolan there, but, yeah, it's a medium popcorn. While it's got a lot of flaws. It's got a lot of characters I'll never remember their names or whatever. It is watchable, and there are some stuff in here I do like. I like the neomorphs a lot. I think it's a cool new addition to it. I like seeing the classic xenomorph back on screen. I think Fassbender does a great job in his role. I like Daniels. I think Danny McBride did a great job playing Tennessee. I think he needs some more dramatic roles, to be honest with you, because I think he really
he's getting them. That's the thing. He's getting some stuff. So yeah,
he's going to be in the next Halloween movie.
Yeah,
so
he's writing it too, which I'm very interested to see how it goes. So
yeah, so it's a medium popcorn. I mean, I think with a rewrite and Ridley Scott, just being like, watch Alien again and then go back and just kind of rewrite this movie. I think it could have been a very, very good movie, but it's a medium movie.
Ridley needed to be producer, and Neil Blomkamp should have directed it. Like that, they should have merged the ideas that were going around.
Well, not only that, but it's like, why not just made Prometheus and this movie sequels? You know what I mean? It's like, what, pull a not even that. I mean, you could have it in the universe where all the stuff with Ripley happened, and just have this happening sometime between Alien 3 and Alien 4, where it's like, okay, maybe Peter Whalen's distant relative or something like that, who was still in charge of the company, went out there seeking these engineers, and all this other stuff happened. It would make a lot more sense if that was the case. Mm-hmm. The problems with prequels is you got to hit certain dots to be able to match up with the new ones. And I think a lot of times that does handcuff the creative, output for a movie. And the thing is, if you're not able to hit those dark dots, not able to hit those marks, then just don't do it. Just make it a sequel. You can create your own rules. You can change stuff around. Having the new advanced tech that we see on the ships, having the androids that can heal themselves and all that stuff would make a lot more sense in the future, as opposed to leading up to Alien, where we have, them running off MS-DOS or something like that in the ship. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's just, it's not the movie's fault. It was made in the 70s. So that's what they thought. But it's just like, it would just make a lot more sense. And it's just, again, the prequel stuff is it's hard to hit. It's hard to hit. So, but anyways, going back, it's a medium popcorn. It's disappointing to say the least, but it's not as bad as I guess it could have been.
So my question is, do you think they'll continue it? Do you think they'll let Ridley keep doing these? And where does it go? Do they keep stringing this out, or do you think they finally do give us the answers that we want? And should we even want those anymore?
Here's my fear, and I've discussed it with a couple other people who've seen the movie, and what I think is going to be the end game for this. I think the next movie will be the last one, and this will be the one that leads up to Alien, because I think that's probably if they're going to make another one, I think they're going to say, we got one more movie here, where there's no 2 or 3 more, like you're saying, Ridley. We got one more. We'll let you make it. And what I think they're going to do is, there's 2,000 colonists on the ship. And if you go back to Alien, there was thousands of eggs in that ship. And I think what it's going to turn out to be is that for some reason, somehow, they're gonna run into the engineers again. And I think what's gonna happen is the colonists that are on the ship, it's gonna be discovered that David turned everybody into eggs. That was Ridley's big thing with Alien. Remember how Dallas and Brett were turning into eggs? He's obsessed with that idea, even though it makes no sense that you need to have a person turn into an egg and then a person to create an alien. That doesn't make as much sense as there being an alien queen.
Right.
And so I think that's what the end game is going to be. And to even stretch it a little bit further, I think that the space jockey that Dallas and Kane and Lambert encounter in Alien is going to be David. I think that it's going to be, he ends up going inside that suit and he's impregnated, and that the alien comes out and it's now the biomechanical, where it's like it takes the traits of David being mechanical, and maybe that thing then takes, kills the 2,000, colonists and turns them into eggs. I don't know. I'm throwing out a lot of different ideas.
Man,
here, but
I'm going to tell you, go write that.
Happen.
Go write that, please. That sounds amazing. That would be the best third part they could do with this. That makes so much sense. Now, it doesn't account for the size differential, but we can figure that out later. I like the idea. That makes so much sense. Now, because you've said that will not happen. You know that, right? You've put that into the universe now. So we'll get something that Damon Lindelof directs. But, it's a great idea, though.
Even when we talked about Prometheus, it was like this whole thing with like cave paintings and everything. It's like, why not have it that there was a signal being shot into outer space? Again, these movies are all about people discovering signals, and it turns out that it was a fail-safe for the engineers, where if a species that they created got advanced enough where it could be able to identify the signal and be able to seek them out, that they needed to be destroyed. That way they can continue to be the top of the food chain in this universe. Right. And that's why they were going to go back to kill them. I mean, there's some logical stuff there that they're just missing. And even with Covenant, how much better would this have been if David got down to this planet and, it was, let's say it was the engineer's homeworld and these alien eggs were there. They were, were they creations of the engineers? Were they just something that was living on this planet? What were they? Leave it in mystery. I think just to go back and to say that these were midichlorians and that's how the Jedi were created, I think you're putting too much explanation on something that should just be kind of left vague, because again, your imagination and the ideas that you can come up with to connect these are going to be so much more powerful than whatever they can put on screen.
I agree with you there. As much as I want answers, and I've railed against this movie for an hour and a half now about it didn't give me the answers I wanted, and this series has gone off the rails from doing that or whatever. Every time I've watched a film series that gave me those answers, I don't know that I've ever been completely satisfied with it. I'm like, it's always better in the chase. It's what I said early in the podcast. We talked about TV shows. The landings, the endings are hard because once you finally get there, what do you do? It's where do we go? It's hard to ever wrap the circle completely up, and because the getting there's the fun of it. And maybe I don't want those answers, But what I do want the next time, I want to say this. I don't need another epic 2 hour and 15-minute movie. I kind of want a sleek 95-minute scary movie. This is one thing I didn't say about this when we were reviewing it, Nick, but I got to say, the other thing this is missing from the other Alien and Aliens movies, and even Alien 3, this is way too wide open. There's no claustrophobia in this. As much as they try to create it, they don't do a good job of it, and I never felt like closed in the way that you need to in these kind of movies. So we've said all we can say about it at this point. I mean, we can hope for better down the line, but I guess we'll see in a few years. I mean, I don't know. We'll be returning to Blade Runner 2049 though later this year. Like we teased that one talking about it. We reviewed Blade Runner with Kurt, and we're going to come back and watch that new one. I've seen the newest trailer; it looks interesting. So, but we've got more stuff coming out before then, man. I mean, we're looking at doing some different things. You threw down the gauntlet the other day. You've got a little trilogy you want us to do, starring Vin Diesel, and this time not a car, right?
No, it's going to be a spaceship. It was kind of going back over the notes of the Alien series. There was a script written by David Twohy for Alien 3. I don't exactly remember the particulars of his script, but I do want to say that it did get transformed into the movie called Pitch Black. And I think when you actually do watch that, Jay, you'll see why I think that, because to me, it's a movie that could easily be set in the Alien universe. And yeah, I mean, they did decide to make 2 sequels, believe it or not, even though none of the movies were extremely successful. I guess maybe on DVD they made a lot of money or something like that, but it goes from Alien style monster horror to Star Wars Dune, and then kind of back to, like, wouldn't say like monster horror, but more of, you'll see when you get there. It's a movie that has 3 parts, and all 3 parts are very, very different. So it'll be an interesting discussion.
I'm curious to see that one too. I've never seen any of those, so it's also another reason to do it. Is I've never seen it. You find something I've never seen, I'm always down. So we're gonna get into that one coming up soon. Of course, we've got more in the Kubrick retrospective that Kurt and I've been doing coming out and everything. And I want to tell folks right now, though, the next thing you're gonna get, we're going to go back to horror, and Ron and Brian and I are getting back together. We're going to revisit Scream. Scream 1 through 4 is coming out next. That's going to be kind of our June series, and then we'll get into some of the other stuff as the summer rolls on. So glad to get into a little bit of horror here, and then we'll get back into some more sci-fi action stuff later on. Again, folks, you can always follow us on iTunes, subscribe to the podcast, Continuous Play Podcast, Film Strip. Find us on the web at continuousplaypodcast.com/movies, and let us know what you think. Leave us a good review on iTunes. Helps other people find the show. Until next time, for Nick, I'm Jay. Thanks for listening to Film Strip.
Thank you for listening to Film Strip. You can find more episodes on our website, continuousplaypodcast.com/movies. Please leave us a positive review on iTunes and link up with us on Facebook. The Film Strip theme music is produced and performed by Frozen Lake 121.